Welcome back to The Ultimate Dad. This is kicking off episode 2 of the S10 drag truck build. We're gonna get in there, we're gonna get the bed cleaned out, and we're gonna take the bed off of it so we can get the factory gas tank out of this thing. And then we're gonna take a look at the suspension and kind of put a list together of everything we need to do there. So you ready to get to it?
Let's go.
Let's go. Alright, now that we got the bed of this thing cleaned out, we can actually start rigging up a way to lift this bed off. Now these S10 beds aren't that heavy, but when it's you and a 9-year-old, we're gonna have to get creative on this thing. So what I'm thinking is, we have that cherry picker, and these S10s have, I don't know if you can see them too good, but they got these hooks on all 4 corners, over there, over there. So my thought is, can we just kind of like make an X pattern with the chain on this thing, grab the cherry picker in the middle of it, even though it's going to be kind of tipsy, we should be able to pick it up, kind of get it out of the way. Then we're just going to stand it on in on a couple of like moving carts, those little furniture dolly things, and we can shove it in the corner and kind of get it out of the way. So see if we can get this thing rigged up. So Dad's out there, I don't know if your kids look out for you the way that mine do, but I'm not saying that I'm a hoarder, but I have a hard time getting rid of hardware packs and little pieces of chain and all that. My kids were on a walk and found this chain. I think it was an old dog chain. They found it laying on the road, and they got it and they kept it. And look how perfect this thing is. The idea and the plan, now, again, we could be completely wrong with this, but we're gonna bring the cherry picker right in here between the wheels, and we're gonna try to grab it right here and see if we can't hoist this thing off so we can get it separated from the truck. You see what I'm talking about? The very first bed bolt behind the cab, it still has, I can't see it clearly, but it looks like it's a 1/2-inch socket still stuck to it. So, hey, we got us a free socket. But there's a bed bolt here. There's a bed bolt that looked like used to be there, but it is missing. You're going to see the same thing on the other side of the truck, and then that is all that holds the front of this bed on. And let's roll around here to the back, and let's see what's holding the back on here. Let's roll to the inside. There is, I'm going to get my light squared away here where you can see. Don't look like there's much of anything back there holding it on. But on the very rear of the truck, this is a bed bolt, and it's going to be the same on the driver's side as well. Yeah, I can see it from over there. There's only going to be, it looks like a wire connector that we're going to have to disconnect for the taillights, but we're going to get these bolts blasted out right quick and hook the cherry picker up. Let's see if we can't get this bed off. I am curious to see. Now, this truck looks very solid. The frame's pretty dirty with just like road grime and debris, but we're gonna pressure wash and clean this whole frame, and after we do some bracing, we are gonna do a single stage paint on this, just to, gloss black, like any kind of chassis paint, not spray paint. You're gonna find out that I do not like to use spray paint, hardly ever. It just doesn't last, and not a fan of it. But we'll be back to you in just a second. All right, we got the bed bolts out, and now Asher's gonna take out the bolts that hold the filler neck and that whole doodad all together. So we're gonna jam those out right quick.
Come on, stay in the siding.
All right, so what we did here, we didn't come off to the side. If we was to put the cherry picker on the side, I was gonna have to take this wheel off. So we're not directly in line with it from the max extension on the cherry picker, but we came from the back. We're gonna give it a whirl anyway and see what happens here. And it's already picking. Let's see if I can lift this corner up here, Ash. And yep, it's picking. Go ahead and lift her up some more. Guys, this is working. If you're by yourself and you don't have a set of helping hands, if you do have a cherry picker and a long enough chain, I'm not sure exactly what size chain that is, but you can make it all happen by yourself. Well, there you have it. Honestly, I've never done this before this way. We've never built a drag truck before. Let me just start by saying that. I'm not a professional. I'm fluent with electronics, with engine building, transmission and everything, but I've never built a purpose-built kind of like, well, it's not purpose-built. We want to street truck drive this thing just as much, but we've never done anything like this. So a lot of this is just kind of common sense and stuff that I've seen from other videos, and there's plenty of info out there, things that worked for guys, things that didn't work for guys. So this is just kind of a culmination of all of that. But as you can see here, this, there was not really any gaps in the brakes in the camera from the footage that you guys seen. From the time we got the bolts out of the bed to with it hanging right here, this literally took probably less than 10 minutes. So if you don't have a cherry picker for these kinds of projects, you probably ought to get one, because I mean, it's not just for engines and transmissions. This worked perfect. All right, now that the little blue truck's probably feeling naked without the bed on it, this is our first look at the chassis on this thing.
And it is dirty.
It is dirty, but you know what it's not? It's not rusty. There's a few little odds and ends, like, I don't know what. You can see this little bracket right here is in place.
Right,
looks like somebody took a cutting torch or welded something to it and it cut off. They did a terrible job welding it. So we'll have to clean that up, because that's got I'm gonna rip your skin right open, written all over it. These factory shock mounts are gonna get cut off completely. What we're gonna do on this truck is we're gonna run a through bar pretty much from this side all the way to this side, and then we'll mount our mounts on the axle tubes for our air shocks. We are running air shocks. I don't know if that's a good idea or a bad idea, but that stuff gets really expensive for Q1 shocks.
Comment down below.
Yeah, well, I mean, if they comment, a lot of people are going to say that, you know, that, what is it, Q1 shocks, I think, you know, and I'm sure they're good, but you want the adjustability. And the air shock, since we still have leaf springs in this, we're going to remove the bottom leaf, but we're still having leaf springs in this, so there is still some suspension there. But we're gonna run air shocks, but we're not gonna plumb those shocks to run together. We're gonna plumb them to where we can air up each one individually. That way when you launch and it wants to bite hard on that right rear, if you need to kind of jack that side up a little bit, you can do that. If you need to let air out of the left side. I know it's been done, I just don't have any experience doing it. So that's what we're gonna try to do at first. Like I said, any project like this is a culmination of trial and error. So we're gonna make mistakes. If any of you guys out there have a better way to do that that's budget-minded, that doesn't involve $500, $600 shocks, put in the comment section. I'd love to hear the info. And you know, this isn't a let's bash anybody, you know, channel, or you're doing everything wrong. This is a learning thing. You know, this is the step-by-step, so other guys out there can have a chance to, you know, have kind of like a one-stop shop for information on how to build something like this. So a few nuts and bolts and just kind of basically nipping those hoses. We're not going to use this tank. Obviously, it's going to get a fuel cell put in it, and we're not even going to use any of the factory fuel lines, so we cut all those off. Now you got kind of a clear idea of what's going on under this frame. So the saddle mount, which is the solid mount for the one side of the fuel tank, that's going to get cut out. All the fuel lines are going to go away. Anything that has to do with strapping a fuel tank on this side is going to get cut out. Let's see what else is going to get cut out. Pretty much everything that's not needed. We're going to leave the bump stops. We're going to leave those bump stops. So I already kind of touched on this in the last video, the 8.8 rear end. One thing that you're going to want to do on these, and I've seen this done and I've seen the pictures of the failure from it, is these 8.8s, so this is a cast, I call it the pig. It's just heavy truck world that I'm used to, but the whole center diff, all that, I call that the pig. So if you hear me say the pig, that's in reference to this. But that is cast, and the tubes are regular alloy mild steel. So when they press these tubes into here, what they do from there is right here and on the back side as well. You can see right here on the back side as well, probably one up underneath. They do a plug weld, and then that plug weld is really what actually bonds the tube to the pig. Now, I've seen pictures of these that whenever they're under heavy horsepower applications, the plug welds will break, and what happens is the pig basically stands straight up once it breaks. Breaks your drive shaft, breaks everything, and this thing stands up because of the torque. Because the plug welds broke, and then it allowed the pig to spin on the tubes. So one thing that's recommended, and I'm a welder, so take this advice, is you weld the tubes to the pig on the outside. Now, considering that this is cast, it's okay to use a regular mild steel, MIG wire. But one thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to preheat this cast. You want to try to get all this as clean as you can, but preheat this cast. That way, whenever you start getting your weld and you start weaving it in, it has a better bonding. It adheres to that a lot better, or penetrates that a whole lot better. But with those factory plug welds and then an additional bead, these are going to outlive the power that what this whole rear end can hold as a complete unit. I know I touched base on the first video kind of about what this is, the spec sheet is, or the spec chart. So yes, 410, 97 Explorer, 410 with the track lock. And I did narrow the passenger side tube. Again, the reason for that is to narrow the whole thing, but it centers the pig in the truck. So I'm gonna have a drive shaft from the transmission to rear end that is directly in line, completely straight. Now, even though I try to focus this truck on a lot of budgetness sort of building, I'm not going just as cheap as I can on this entire truck. I want things to be right. I don't want to have trouble with the rear end. If you're wanting to build one of these on the cheap, you can still do everything that I'm doing, except for maybe the amount of rebuilding. The motor that I had in this, or the motor that's in this truck, is a running engine. You didn't have to take the whole thing apart and rebuild it. I did because of the longevity. I wanted to be sure I had new bearings. I knew I was going to go with a cam, better springs and all that, but you don't have to do that. You can take an S10, just throw a 350 in it with the standard 7.5 rear end, maybe put a spool in it, and have a very nice drag truck, something to go have fun on the weekends with. So this isn't exactly a budget build. And I'll get to a lot of the prices and what I've accumulated in cost in this, minus the labor. We know we never get that back. But I'll display all that, total expense that I have in this thing. But going back to the point of what I'm trying to say is that the rear end, when I had it apart and I was, narrowing this passenger side tube, I did at that point, I went ahead and I put new bearings in the rear end. Now, I didn't see anything wrong with the bearings that came out of it, but I don't want problems with it. Bearings aren't that expensive. I'm already that far into it. So bearings, seals, it did it. I don't have to worry about it. It'll be fine. And I knew that whenever I got back on this project and pulled this truck out of storage, that's one less thing that I have to do is rebuild this rear end. Same thing with the TH350. I'm sure it's a working TH350, but we're gonna tear it apart. We're gonna get into it. We're gonna put red frictions in it. We're gonna put the good stuff in it just to make sure that it lasts. So it's not exactly the most budget build. Yes, you can do everything way cheaper than what I'm doing, but I want to kind of just show how we can do things nice in an inexpensive way, if that makes sense. Last thing I'm going to mention about this rear end, 3-speed transmission, a 5.3 with boost, and a 410 rear end. That's a pretty dangerous combination. That's a very low gear. It's probably honestly a little bit too low, even for the 8th mile track that I'm planning on doing, but we're gonna try it anyway. Now, let's talk about the 8.8 rear end as a whole for a second. So now, I did buy this rear end probably, say I've had the truck for about 4 years. So it's probably around 4 years I've had the rear end. But I bought this rear end for $300. And I have looked recently to kind of see what they're going for, and I've seen them up to $500, $600. That's still a fantastic deal. And I think one way that I'm gonna go with this is, if the 410 is too low, yeah, I know you can go through, pull it all apart, change the gears and everything, but I guarantee you that when this truck is finished as a whole, I guarantee you that you could remove this whole axle and slide another one under it quicker than you could tear that apart with it in the truck and change the gearing and have it all put back together. So I think that's the direction I'm gonna go. I'm probably gonna look for like a 355 rear end. Ford made several different gear ratios for these things, but I'm probably gonna just find another one with a lot taller gear to have as a standby if this 410 just doesn't work for me. But I'll do the same thing. I can narrow it and it'll have disc brakes. And what are you looking at that point? You jack it up, pull your U-bolts, drop your rear spring hangers, jack the whole truck up, it falls down, you roll it out, slide the new one in, jack it up, roll it up, you get the drift. But one thing that made these 8.8 popular is, and I call this kind of like, and I just kind of made it up. Maybe it's already made up, I don't know. But I call this, you know, the poor man's 9-inch rear end. I've seen guys at the racetrack that's putting 1,000+ horsepower to these rear ends, and they're lasting, and they're working very well. Now, they probably have aftermarket high-performance axles, which I don't. We have stockers in it. Well, one's stock, one's from Napa. So we'll see what happens with those. We will replace them with better ones if we do tear them up. This not being a Transbake truck, right off the bat, I don't think that axles are gonna be a problem in this thing. But consider this, think about this for a second. $300 for this rear end, and what did it get us? It got us a rear end that can withstand 1,000 horsepower with slight modifications, welding tubes. You don't have to narrow it, but I did. But you don't have to. But it got us gearing, it got us posi track, it got us strength, and it got us disc brakes. Well, this S10 had drum brakes originally, so it got us disc brakes as well. All those upgrades for $300 in one shot. You can't beat it, and I'm not kidding. So, I've seen tremendous amounts of questions on like some of the forums on Facebook, the S10 forums. Man, if you've ever went through those, you've seen 10 million questions about the rear ends and the 8.8s and the what do I do. I just put it point blank. The 8.8, a stock 8.8 will fit in the little notch, you know, the little nub that the shackle hangs in. It will fit. Now you do have to pry the leaf springs out about, I want to say about a 3/8 of an inch on each side to actually get them to slide in, but it's not going to hurt anything if you do that. But again, it's a very easy crossover. We are going to pull the 5.3 back out of here, and we're going to go ahead, even without the torque converter, we're going to bolt up the transmission to it. We're going to put that package together, and we're going to go ahead and slide it in there. And when we get the cross member in, we're going to slide that in there, and we're going to get the degrees set on this, which we're talking about where the angle of the engine is. Needs to match a certain degree on the rear end. That way you have the correct drivetrain geometry. And so once we get that set, we'll get a measurement from our transmission to the rear end, and then we can go ahead and start working on our drive shaft. And at that point, you have basically the foundation already put in there. So with that being that, I think we're gonna hang it up today. All I'm gonna do is, I'm probably gonna back this thing up and clean up some of the junk that fell underneath it. I'm gonna clear out this corner of the garage, move those torches out of the way, and I'm gonna take this bed and I'm gonna stand it on this end. This end, actually, if you look at this, see how loaded it is? Obviously the old man that had it had something heavy in the back, did a panic stop, and whack! bent that out. But we're gonna probably just take a rubber mallet, bang that back straight so this whole bed will sit straight. And we're honestly gonna shove it in the corner and just forget about this for a while. We're still a ways away from having to do any body. The first body work that we're gonna do to this thing is gonna be the firewall. So once I have everything pretty much identified and marked to where I'm gonna put everything, I showed you this where I kept the heater box and everything for the AC and heat and all that stuff that we're not gonna have. See all these little spot tacks right here? No, I'm not leaving it that way. Am I gonna go through and fully weld it? Absolutely not. But we are gonna go through and we're gonna fill this and blend it back in so it looks uniform, it's smoothed out, you won't see it. There's no point, you don't have to fully weld that in there. But whatever holes that we're not gonna use, that we're not gonna need, we're gonna plug all that. And the firewall is gonna be the first thing to get bodied and painted. And then we're gonna skip body until the very end. The rest of this truck is really solid. The bed needs a lot of work, but the cab is in amazing condition for its age. So that's the part that I'm actually excited about. When you start squirting paint, because that's what I like to do. I like the nuts and bolts in the building, but you know, the paint is where the creativity comes in. So anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. This will wrap up episode 2, and we're gonna try to make as much progress through these videos as you can, but I'm the same as you dads out there. I work a normal job, I got a house to take care of, so we're doing as much as we can do it, but as promised, we're gonna bring you along for the ride the entire way, and I hope you learned something, and I wanna learn something too. If I'm missing something, please put it in the comment section. It'd greatly be appreciated, and if you haven't yet, please like and subscribe, and thank you for watching.